record button first. Now I'll call the meeting to order. It's 15:01. Quorum is present. The meeting is duly constituted, and the first order of business is approval of the agenda. May I have a motion? Thanks, and a second. Any ads? Seeing none. All in favour? And opposed? That carries. Public participation. We need a motion, which I see is written for us, so I'll just read it, that the usual time limits be relaxed to allow the municipal grant presentations up to 5 minutes per presentation, not including questions from council, and that the report 2017 municipal grant applications be received for information purposes. Can I have a second? Thanks. All in favour? Opposed? That carries. So, who's first?
The Arts Council.
Okay, Jutta. I think that's you.
Okay. So my apologies first of all for not arriving at the last meeting. I thought it was at 7 for some reason, because we'd always done that, so I was a bit shocked, but I'm happy to be here today.
But where were you at 7?
At 6, actually I was getting ready to come to the meeting at 7, and then I reread the email and I thought, oh my God, I've missed it, so I'm very sorry.
No problem.
Okay. The Arts Council, maybe I'll just run through, do I need to actually go through our proposal? I mean, you've all got it, right?
No, I think you can take it as read. I'm sure, certainly I have a few questions.
Yeah, so
but
I'm just going to give you a little bit more information.
give us the 20,000 foot thing, and then we'll go from there. Yeah.
Okay. So this year, we're planning to do the Arts and Garden Festival once again. Every 2 years we decided was a better time frame because it's hard to get gardens organized year after year. So this year that will be happening. We've also made a decision with the banner contest to actually have a longer time frame for entries for that, and to have the banners displayed in the gardens and the community voting on the banners when they go through the gardens. So we thought that would be a nice opportunity for that to be happening. We are again planning our Christmas fair. We had a very successful fair last year. Lots of people, I think somewhere between 150 and 200 people probably came to that. The people that were there pretty much sold out their products. I heard great responses from everyone in terms of really nice atmosphere. We had music. It was great. So I think that's a great event, and we're going to continue to do that. We're also, we've been struggling to try to get some classes going, art classes going, because we're having a hard time finding people to do the instruction. But I think we've got a couple of leads, so we're hoping this year that we may be able to run some adult classes and maybe a kids program through the summer for a week or so. So that would be sort of a test run to see if we can handle that and whether we have enough participation. On a broader scale, we are part of the Sea to Sky Arts Councils, which is Bowen Island, Lions Bay, Squamish, Whistler, Pemberton. And we've been meeting now for about 3 years, and we're really gaining some momentum. We have a website that was established that now has a calendar on it that you can go to and see what arts and culture events are happening throughout the corridor. You can click on the individual arts councils, but also the calendar will show everything that's going on. So that's a real bonus, I think, for people who want to, travel along the corridor or visitors who are coming. Last year we had a traveling art exhibit called Our Sea to Sky, which went from Bowen Island to Squamish to Whistler and included artists from all the communities along the way. That was very successful. We had lots of participation, and artists did sell some work at those as well. We're planning this year, Whistler has something which they call an art walk, which runs from September, October, November every year. And what we've concluded just yesterday was that we're all going to participate in that art walk. So during that period of time, all the arts councils will organize events and perhaps have artist studios open, so that as people are traveling the corridor through that time, they can visit various communities and participate in arts. We have decided not to move forward with the proposal for the library. talked about this at our last board meeting again, and we're feeling a bit reluctant, I think mostly from the point of view that we're really not sure that the community would support us being in that space as an arts council, that we think that given the lack of space that we have in the community for various things, that it's probably better for that to be open and available to all the, you know, the groups that are in the village. So we kind of backed off that. I mean, we can still presumably use it for events that we'd like to do, and so I don't think that there's necessarily a need. I think our original vision that there could be an arts and cultural center in the community, because most communities actually have that, and it could encompass a number of things, but maybe we're just not quite ready to try to do that at this point in time. Maybe a couple of things on the request. You might have seen that we credited back $1,000. We have, since I think it was the 40th anniversary of Lions Bay was the first year that we started to undertake doing signage for all the groups in the village. And because they were so bad and they were so handmade, and so we thought we should up the game a bit. So we've been doing that for a number of years, but it seems now that every group seems to be producing good signage and doing that on their own. So we've decided that we don't really need to be part of that anymore, and that we've sort of accomplished our job in bringing that standard up. And the other thing was the public art and design, $1,000. We did not do anything last year. We had been asked to look at the water tank, which we have been doing. We ran into some complications, I would say, with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because our first thought, well, maybe we could shrink wrap it. You know, there's sort of some physical issues around water dripping down, around graffiti problems, you know, all sorts of things that come into play. So we've been grappling with that quite a lot. We think we now have a solution which we'll present at a different time. We're going to do some visuals for you to see what that would look like. But it's a fairly simple solution, but still I think could be effective. So we would like to carry that forward into this year, because we will need some money then this year to do that. Okay.
Fantastic, thanks.
Good.
Council? Can I have some water?
Oh, sure.
Okay, I'll go first. So about the water tank, the $1,000 that you raised last year,
Yes.
would that actually execute the project, or is that just to plan and?
No, we don't charge anything for the planning side. Right?
Okay.
So it's only to actually do something. And I think what this would involve is largely painting, maybe some stenciling and painting. So we think that the $1,000 is a good amount, and if we spent less, we would give the rest back.
Okay, so just ancillary to that, although that's not really part of the grant discussion, I assume that you'd be going out to the community to ask for feedback on proposed designs, or would that be council job, or do we present them a fait accompli? What's the thinking there?
Well, I think what we'll do is we'll put forward, I don't think we have a lot of options, you know, because I did have some quotes on someone to come and actually do a mural. Everything is extremely expensive. We couldn't get anything for under, you know, $8,000 actually to do it. So, and I believe we had asked originally whether there was any money available, and we're told no, there wasn't. So,
But now he's going to tell us different now.
oh,
Well, a council can choose to augment any arts council funding for that, for sure. I would like to mention that we have a scheduled highway tank for replacement as part of the clean water wastewater. So the point of designing something for the tank may be moot if we do get funding to replace that tank.
okay. And then would you still want to do something?
Then the new tank would need something, presumably,
That would be an option.
unless
correct.
you're proposing municipal orange or municipal green.
The tank would be a stainless steel bolt together tank, so it would be a blackish, very dark steel.
Oh, scenic.
Yeah, lovely.
And that doesn't take into account the modeling work that we're doing to look at the possibility of eliminating the tank
Altogether,
altogether.
yeah.
Right, and so,
Well, it was you two that asked the first time, do we need that tank?
yeah.
We did. Okay.
So those two items are on the table right
Okay,
now.
so maybe what we'll do then is you can let us know what happens with that,
Yeah.
and then we can proceed accordingly.
Yeah, okay, so the money is sitting there right now because it was unspent last year. So the current ask is for $5,500.
I think it's 5,000.
5,000.
Wasn't it? 5,000?
55.
Yeah.
I'm looking on page 9 of 44 of the
Yeah, me
package.
too, 55.
I
The
think
actual
that's correct.
grant request is 5,000.
It's 5,000.
Yeah.
Oh, see, that would actually make for an extra $500, so it must be 5,000, okay? So, good round number.
Yeah.
And for that, we get all the things you mentioned and more, because there's a bit left over from last year.
Yes. That would include, there's a $300 amount that we pay to Sea to Sky Arts Councils to be part of that. We've credited $1,000 back.
Yeah.
We have banners, $2,200, because we've been managing to lower the prices on those through Jonathan, because he's got some great connections. And the $3,500 covers our events, so, yeah.
Okay?
Well,
Go ahead.
congratulations on your membership and
That's good.
the aggressiveness that your executive continue to get new members. Again, real kudos. It's a huge number for our small village. Look, the library is late-breaking. Is there, as you stand there and mull on this pitch, is there some time that you think that you might want to kind of blue sky and just allocate a couple of days, purpose unknown, for the
For
library?
the use of the library?
Yeah.
It's possible, because one of the things we thought about was the idea of, through the summer months when we do have people visiting, that there might be an opportunity to make some art displays, some historical society, you know, things that would be of interest to people coming through the village. Likely that would just be on the weekend.
Okay.
Our challenge there would be to find people that would staff the premises, because we can't just leave it open. But that's a possibility, that we could do some interesting things over the weekends through the summer.
Okay, that's, so we may see you again. Council is contemplating, and I haven't spoken to my colleagues about this, so this is also at 20,000 feet. There's contemplation of putting a new bus stop around the corner from the village complex. I think I wasn't around when prior ones were involved. I'm not sure if that was staff-led exercise, or was the Arts Council had some hand in that?
I believe that Rob Simons designed the existing shelter, like the one that's down on, you know, by the works yard in that area, and undertook the supervising the construction of that.
Okay.
I don't believe the Arts Council was actually involved in it. But, you know, one of the things that would be maybe interesting to think about if we're doing another one would be, is there an art component to that in terms of a panel or something that could be done?
Okay.
That could be, because that's a very high profile location there as well.
Exactly. Similarly to the water tank, which may not be there. The other sort of public art thing that we have is this notice board here at the creek.
Yeah.
Have you had any contemplation about what something could be done to that? I mean, it's you know, it's sort of 70s vintage now.
Yeah. I know a few years ago, several years ago, we changed all the photos and did all of that for the one that's right next to the I guess it's adjacent to it. It does, you know, it's a very high profile spot, right? It would be nice to do something that is more attractive and that would draw people. There is the map there, which I know I see people all the time in the summer coming up and looking at that. So we can certainly, we're happy to look at any of these things that you might contemplate doing.
I suspect that if they do come about, that we will look for extraordinary budget for that as a sort of a council-funded project under Arts Council auspices rather than your specific budget. Just back to the budget though,
Yep.
I noticed that last year you spent $1,200 on admin and nothing slated for this year. How does that come about?
No, I think that this is just sort of grouped, right? So I did the specific profit and loss to show you where expenses went. So admin, for example, we have to provide insurance. It's about $450 for our events, because the village requires that with the hall, and we also require it with the arts and garden, that the people who have their gardens are not liable for anything that happens, right? So
But so, what I'm saying is, where is that expense for this year?
well, our total expenses last year were $10,000.
Yeah, and so you're only planning on spending $5,000 this year.
Well, that's what we're getting from you, but that doesn't mean we don't have other costs.
So you're gonna fundraise for the difference?
Yeah,
Oh.
we get it through, you know, our events, we
Yeah.
have membership, you know, we have other ways that we raise money, because the village does not pay all of our expenses.
No, of course.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm just, okay, so I get that. The other thing that I did want to ask was, what do you have in mind for applying for gaming grants, community gaming grants?
We haven't done that yet, but we also have opportunities, aside from that, we have opportunities for funding under the Arts BC groups. There's lots of funding for arts out there.
Yeah.
But we have to actually have projects. So for example,
Yeah.
if say the library had come to fruition, we could have possibly gotten an infrastructure arts grant for that, to do what we might need to do there. So it has to be project specific,
Yeah.
actually.
Okay. Okay,
So-
well, that could all perhaps come as projects
Yeah.
arise.
Yeah, well, for example, the overpass, there's always been talk about that, right? And my understanding is now that we are actually going to be allowed to do something, or the underpass, whichever way.
Sort of an uplighting mural type thing.
Yeah, something, right? So again, that would be something that we would actually seek funding for,
Mhm.
because it obviously would be a more expensive undertaking. And so we just need to identify any of those things that we think are valuable and we might want to do, and then try to get some money for it.
Okay, good. For the purposes of this discussion, the ask is for $5,000. Do we all understand where that comes and where it's going? Okay, so we'll say thanks very much.
Okay.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Good presentation, thank you.
Great.
And we'll move on. To the Sea to Sky Invasive Species Council. You must be Claire.
I'm Claire, yeah.
Welcome.
My name's Claire Greenberg. I'm from the Sea to Sky Invasive Species Council, so thank you for having me here today. It's nice to meet you all. So I wanted to tell you a little bit more about our programs and our request for funds. So our request, our application contained two requests, the first of which was that the Village of Lions Bay join other local governments in the region in providing stable annual funding for our partnership program with a contribution of $1,500 per year. And the second request is that the Village of Lions Bay participate in our fee-for-service field program, which means hiring our field crews during the summer months to carry out inventory control and monitoring of invasive plant infestations. So I'm going to expand on both of those requests and hope to answer any questions you might have. So for the partnership program, each year we request funds from all local and regional governments in the Sea to Sky region, and the funds we receive go towards our education and outreach program and our coordination and consultation program. Our current partners are the Resort Municipality of Whistler, the District of Squamish, the Village of Pemberton, and the Squamish Regional District. So examples of the kind of services that participants receive include things like support and advice to staff and residents for species ID, control recommendations, those kind of things. Access to educational resources. So we've been around since 2009 and we've developed a whole series of swag. So we have things like ID guides, little profiles of species, fact sheets for species that aren't here yet. We have a toxic plants brochure. There's a whole lot of stuff, so I'm happy to pass this around if you guys want to have a look.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I'd like an invasive weed in a jar.
You wouldn't believe I may have had that once or twice before. Yeah, so there's access to those existing established resources. There's also, we provide sharing of knowledge and resources. So a large part of what we do is we act as a conduit of information between different governments, so municipalities, provincial and federal governments, First Nations and other invasive species councils across BC and across Canada. We keep up to date on research and regulations pertaining to invasive species. We attend workshops, conferences, meetings, and we relay all this information back to our local government partners, because we understand that there's not always a point person on staff that's the invasive species coordinator. In the Sea to Sky, our government's usually not big enough to have that. We also provide access to invasive species inventory and control maps, and can provide the village with custom GIS maps. One of the main things we do is provide staff training to local governments. So currently we provide invasive species ID and management training to staff from the resort municipality of Whistler and the District of Squamish through our invasive free certification program. So that's kind of lumped in with the partnership program. We normally charge people a $40 fee for that, but for our local government partners, we waive that fee. So we could do the same thing for public works staff from the village. We can also provide consultation services. We've helped other staff from other municipalities develop things like bylaws, disposal recommendations, policies and invasive free planting lists. We can do landholder alert letters, community weed pools, community info sessions. Basically we tailor a package to suit your needs that would be about 30 hours of staff time. So yeah, for a relatively small investment, we can provide these much needed services. The idea being that we can achieve much more through a united collaborative effort rather than if each municipality tries to go it alone. And some of our partners think of it as cost sharing for the services and resources that their staff would otherwise have to provide. So that's the sort of education and awareness piece, and that's aimed at prevention, which is always more effective and less expensive than control. But however, some species are already in Lions Bay, so the next thing I want to talk about is controlling invasive species that are already here. So that's what we call our fee-for-service field program. So we have CISC crews that work. CISC, I'm talking about Sea to Sky Invasive Species Council. If you hear me say CISC, that's our abbreviation. We have crews that work from May through to September that we hire out to various stakeholders and landholders throughout the summer months to do inventory control and monitoring of invasive plants mainly, but we do some invasive animal work as well. Now I didn't include a dollar amount in the application for this because I need a bit more information in order to estimate what control is actually going to cost. So I've been talking with Nye since submitting the application about where do we start with invasive plants in Lions Bay. The provincial maps have very little information on them about invasive plants that are here. I know of at least 5 sites where we have giant hogweed, and you may have heard of giant hogweed, you may have seen it. It's a plant that's quite hazardous to human health. The sap in it can cause severe burns and can even cause blindness. So for that reason alone, there's an immediate need to control this species at sites where it exists in Lions Bay. We have had a few phone calls this past year, so we think it's probably spreading. There's people noticing it. It really needs to be addressed. So for mine, that's the highest priority species for control, but it does pose the question of, well, in order to figure out what to do, we really need to know how much of the problem we have, where are these species, and not only giant hogweed, but there are a couple of other high priority species like knotweed, yellow flag iris, purple loosestrife that are on the Weed Control Act that landholders must remove. So Nye and I have discussed that step 1 is probably to get out there and do a survey and try and map and figure out where these plants are. Part of that would be training the public works crew to be able to identify those plants and contribute to that mapping effort. But I've come up with a ballpark figure of about $1,000, which would be 8 hours of crew time to do a road survey and to map what we can see from the roads and probably municipal parks and any other key municipal lands that you guys identify as priority. And then teaming that with what you get in the partnership program, having a public outreach campaign where people can tell us if they've got these species on their lands. Mm-hmm. I think would work well as a step 1, and then we can figure out how much it's going to cost to actually control this stuff. Our giant hogweed sites, it's hard to say without seeing the size of them, but they can range anything from about $350 for 1 year of control at a site up to the thousands. It just depends on size, it depends on accessibility, depends on the method. So it's really hard to give you a figure of how much control would cost without knowing all those things. So yeah, so I wanted to bring up the field program part, even though it's not in our request, to just start the conversation going, because I think we do need to do the inventory as step one, and hopefully if we're able to do that this year through, I don't know which budget that would come out of, but if we are able to do that, look at costing out some control for giant hogweed later this year, because I think it's really an immediate need to get on top of the giant hogweed sites. Yeah, so if you have any questions or you want to know more about the fieldwork side of things, I'm happy to answer.
Thanks.
Carl, thank you. And I'm looking at page 18 on mine, which is the revenue side
Yeah.
of your draft budget.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could kind of give me a flavor for who has committed to, I mean, it's a pretty big budget there.
Yeah. The operations is expensive.
Yeah, so the bigger ones are Modi, so
Yep.
Modi's in on this?
Yep, confirmed.
They're confirmed,
Yep.
And I see MFL NRO.
Yeah, they're very likely. We've been getting a similar amount the last couple of years.
Okay,
It's
so
not
they're in for
confirmed just
60
yet.
Gs. Whistler's in for a big number.
They're in for $29,000.
Okay, Squamish and a whopping pile there.
Yeah, about 36,000, I think it is.
So they're in?
Yep.
Good. And Hydro, Interjex, and Fortis are in?
Yep, Hydro is confirmed. We have a 3-year agreement with them. Interjex, we've already signed contracts.
Good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Most of it's confirmed.
Okay, how do you come up with 1,500 number for a village of Lions Bay size?
Yeah, so that's the same amount we charge the village of Pemberton, which is
4 times our size. Yeah.
But yeah, true. But there is a minimum cost to spending time
Sure.
on these things. So we for our smaller municipalities, we charge 1,500. For Whistler, we charge 4,000. For Squamish, it's 4,500. So it goes up with population size, and the SLRD is 3,000. Even though it's a lot larger, there's less people.
Yeah, I'm not even going to necessarily touch on the survey and removal situation, because we actually have a landscaping budget coming, and that would be a separate topic.
Sure.
And council can opine on that, in the fullness of time. So
Sure.
we're specifically talking about municipal grant right now. So 1,500 is the number. Do you have a sense of whether spending that money would conflict with any of our obligations or resources as a member of the MVRD, the old GVRD?
I don't believe so. The Invasive Species Council of Metro Vancouver, who's our sister group, who works with a lot of the other Metro Vancouver groups, they have a similar program, but they're very much focused on central Metro Vancouver and
Urban environment.
Yeah, we've had an agreement with them that we would look after Lions Bay, even though it's not technically in the SLRD.
It's specifically not, yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
do we have a sense of whether we'd be stepping on any toes if we gave our money to
I
the
don't believe so.
SLRD people instead of the MVRD people?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay,
Yeah, and
Haley, go ahead.
We have given money to the Sea to Sky Council for 3 years in a row.
yeah.
To the tune of 1,500.
No, it's been around the $300 mark. So the reason that we're asking for more is that it's really hard to do much with $300.
Yeah, no, I see what you get for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So if we're comfortable that we're not going to mess with any resource we have out of the GVRD, which now is called the MVRD, by the way. I don't see why we wouldn't go with you guys instead, because you kind of probably understand a slightly more rural environment.
Well, and we are already doing work in this area too. So we do a lot of work in the Brunswick pit for Moti. We do Crown Lands around this area. And
So my big interest, all of this of course is awareness. So I assume that the signage goes up and stays there
Yep.
for some sort of protocol,
Yep, we have.
stipulated time.
Yeah, absolutely. We have herbicide signage that has to stay up 2 weeks post-treatment. And if it's a public perception thing, we can look at doing an interpretive sign so that it has a bit more information than just "we've sprayed here," that it tells you about what species and why and that kind of thing. We're working on that with the District of Squamish for some high-profile sites for them, just to let people know why there's a herbicide sign there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
we
this
could
might be
look-
something the Arts Council could get involved in to actually design signs that are scary and informative.
For sure, we could do that.
I would like to mention that the bylaw that we have right now on herbicide pesticides will need to be changed in order to accommodate invasive species management.
So we'd have to go back to pesticides and herbicides.
For particular noxious weeds, yes.
Can that be done municipal use only? So
I believe so. I believe we have a similar bylaw, or West Van has a similar bylaw that we can purloin.
Is it a cosmetic ban?
no, it's
Oh.
it's poison in the environment type of thing. It was quite similar to West Van's, in fact. I think we probably purloined West Van's original one.
Yeah. And we changed that one because of this specifically. Some of the invasives you can't control mechanically,
Yeah, yeah.
so.
And I assume this is all as a result of climate change that we're starting to see these things, or they're
Well,
just invading?
Partly yes, but also because people move around and invasives follow people. One of the huge things we're seeing at the moment is movement of soil is bringing invasives with it. So if someone is doing construction and gets fill brought in from somewhere, there's currently no certification process to say it's invasive free. So everywhere in our region we see invasives pop up in new developments. So that's definitely something for staff to be aware of, which we could talk about, and keep an eye on new developments because that's where often they come in. But also there's vectors like the highway, rail lines. Yeah, seeds follow wind tunnels and
Yeah.
transport corridors are.
So it's coming, it's not going.
I think it's coming, and there's, in Whistler, we're kind of in a lucky position up there because there's been a couple of really dedicated volunteers that just go and pull everything as soon as they see it. So we're kind of still fighting new incursions up there, but I think there's a lot of species down here that are already established that we need to be containing rather than aiming for eradication, I think.
You mentioned that, are you part of a provincial body?
So-
Invasive species body?
Yeah, so we are affiliated with a provincial body, the Invasive Species Council of BC. They are an independent group, but we are part of a group of 13 regional invasive species councils that work across the province.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I think it seems to me that the benefit to the municipality here, obviously, other than getting weeds pulled under a separate budget, is awareness.
Communications.
Yeah, communication. Okay, anything else, colleagues? Thank you, Claire.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks. I have to run, and can I just get the laminated one back from you with everything else you
Well, that's the one I was going to keep.
can? The yellow flag iris one, I can email to you.
We can keep the rest of these?
You can keep the rest
You
of
know,
them.
Thanks.
Yeah, yeah,
Because,
hang
you
on,
know-
No, I
we
want to have a look
we
at all of
loads
these.
them.
Yeah,
well, you can never use the word noxious enough.
thank you,
Thanks
Claire.
very much.
Thanks for coming. And we'll move on to the next, and I believe final remaining grant. Which I see is only in the form of a free-form letter.
Yes. But I have to tell you that I was kind of amused by some very kindly advice that I received from the office, which was that this was to be short and sweet. It was kindly offered.
Please hold true to that.
I'll try to my best, but I'd like to tell the fellow that left how I'm reminded of a story going back quite a ways when the Highway Advisory Committee was looking for somebody to take the minutes of meetings. And somebody said, well, LKP, that's me, could do it. And why? Because then they would all know what not to say. Anyway, I like reading the piece in the report on community involvement, because I think it says a lot about what volunteers do and what we're trying to do. Now, I'm going to try and keep short and sweet, so I'll go to the recap, which I presume you've read, and the summary, which is where I have estimated points that were raised before, and that is that who's going to look after this. And well, we've come to the conclusion that it will be, in fact, the senior social circle and their associates. It turns out that there's quite a number of people that form a mosaic of community groups, but they have great difficulty in reaching a consensus about how they should support the idea of a resources directory. Some people are very highly focused on a telephone directory, but we in the SSC see it more as a resources directory that will have much more than a telephone directory in it. So based on quotes from several sources, we figure that, at least I figured, the cost of producing 600 copies would be somewhere between $8 and $12 per copy, for a total of, that runs in the range $4,800 to $7,200. Quite big spread, of course. And then I had to do some estimating of what the income or the revenue would be from advertising, and that's a very tricky one to do, but I came up with a potential revenue of $11,400, and then on top of that we have $700, so we'd have over $1,200 in revenue. Now if everything worked out according to plan, we would then be able to produce directories at no cost to the village, with the possibility of having a profit or a surplus that could be used for community use. But this request is for a grant of $2,500 to kickstart the project, because we'll have expenses to meet before we get the revenue from advertising in place. And I think that we would be very happy to see this as a grant, a returnable grant that would kick in if we really work hard and revenues exceed costs. So that's why this is short and sweet.
Thanks, Louis. Colleagues?
2 questions. What's the estimated completion date? And secondly, what's the distribution method?
Well, the distribution method would be door to door, probably. We're thinking, again, we're fluid, but we're thinking that every household should get 1 copy, with additional copies available to purchase, which would be either at the store or by
So
someone.
you're thinking hand delivered? Bang bang on the door?
Yeah, yeah. That's one possibility. And then your other question was the end
Completion date?
Well, it's going to be in the middle of the summer.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to take quite a number of weeks to get the whole job done.
Do you have adequate resources that can do the layout, the camera-ready copy at no compensation?
That is part of this cost of producing the 600 copies.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yes,
That includes layout.
it's included in there, yes.
So how does the 2,500 help you? Because you're going to need to pay the printer to do the run before you can even start collecting your revenue. I would assume your advertising.
Well, I think once we have the layout in place, we can then start collecting revenue from the advertisers. They want to
Actually
see.
cashing the checks.
Yes,
Yeah.
I guess so. And how I came up with the estimate of the cost was to come up with a plan that would have a half page, quarter page, and 1/8 page, and using the estimates from the minute from Bowen Island, from Cortez and Quadra, and there was another organization, and also from talking with the people who produced our 2011 directory. So it's very nebulous, or somewhat, not too bad, but somewhat nebulous. But half a page, we can figure out how much we get from half a page, and in black and white, and in color, and we can come up with a round figure based on 2 options, option A and option B, that I call them. So,
If it's still a random question, how is municipal government represented in the directory?
well,
And the different operating units, such as fireworks?
there would certainly be an option for all kinds of groups to advertise, and there would be several pages allocated, I think, to the municipal council, as has happened in the past. If you look at the directory from the year 2002 to 2011, the municipalities are represented in all of them.
Well, I was thinking,
So in addition to your grant that you might give us, we would charge you.
Well, it would almost be a communications budget.
well, that's what I'm thinking here too, that, this is I mean, Carl, you're gonna have some input on when it is, but clearly the phone numbers for staff, who to call whenever.
Yeah, and things
And-
like water use bylaws and so on.
And,
I mean, we used to spend 12,000 a year
Well-
subsidizing the
Yeah,
whatever it used to be called.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to publish a complete list of bylaws, but there would be a reference or a link. to
well, the
them,
links
links
is where you're going.
Right away.
Okay, well, so you're telling us you believe 2,500 will get you to revenue.
We think so. I mean, we're novices in this. We should give it more if you like.
I know.
Well, seeing as it's returnable,
Well, it's returnable.
just a cash flow
so-
item,
Yeah.
Potentially returnable.
potentially returnable.
Okay, I think for me, should this proceed, then I would ask for the municipal component that the executive for the project liaise with the senior staff in the village.
Do you mean in terms of number of pages that we would allocate, or we can look at costs?
The whole thing.
More for content.
What's the content,
Yeah.
what's the stuff?
Oh, yes, well, we did that at an earlier stage where we did
And,
the various chapters that I see, various sections.
So I think, so that would be my ask for you on the non-financial piece, and concurrently, I think when staff comes up with whatever the rendering is, that's brought forward to us before it goes to print.
Yeah, I don't want to have too much control over artistic license. On the other hand, I want to make sure that we're saying everything that we might want to consider as a communication budget, and in fact making the seed
Well,
capital
Well,
non-returnable.
I'm putting my financial hat on, not my creative hat,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I pass that to staff and the executive for me.
Yeah,
Okay, this is a lot more understandable. Thanks, Louis. Anything else?
Short and
Folks?
sweet, yeah.
Thank you.
Am I?
You, in theory, no, but in practice, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in terms of the aesthetics of that, it's possible that the Arts Council could provide.
I didn't want to volunteer you, but I'm glad you mentioned it.
Because I think that
Well,
would
thank you very much, that's very good to hear.
Thanks. That would be good to have a little bit of
make sure it's
polish there.
Yeah, it's professionals, that's what I've done.
Very good, thank you very much. Okay, so that was that. Let's move on to the next items. You're welcome to stay, but I wouldn't necessarily suggest this is going to be the most scintillating rest of the afternoon, so feel free to leave if you want.
We'll have to get some lunch.
Okay, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of February 7th, please. Thanks. And a second. Ron, that's you.
Yes, just presume it.
Okay, I will presume it. I'll do it on the for the tape, which is blocked.
I'll go negative pledge here. Hang on.
I didn't have anything, but that's probably because I didn't go through any great detail.
I did, there's nothing here.
Okay. So on your say so, Ron, I'm fine with that. So all in favor? Opposed? That carries. And moving on to business arising. Now I have asked for the schedule that we used to see to return, but I wouldn't expect it to be in the minutes yet. But it must be.
Is this the question that you ask every time?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah. So, but that's Peter and I will be talking about that.
Okay.
Is there business arising?
And just the two items that are the new business, which is the repair of the stairs and the bus shelter, which turn up each later on.
Well, that comes into the meeting as well. Yeah. So we can take that as read, as passed on, because that recommendation was made to the council, the business meeting, the council meeting, and we did something about it. So that happened. And what was the other one?
Bus shelter and the stairs.
Oh, those two. Okay, fine. Those both appear in the meeting tonight in the agenda, so we'll leave it at that. And moving on then to unfinished business for 2007 municipal grants. The Council Strategy Committee reviewed the attached summary of 2017 municipal grant application. Bring forward the recommendation for approval to council at tonight's meeting. Can I have a second? Thanks. And so that is on page 27.
So this is basically an updated summary of all the grants. We've seen the presentations of grants more than $1,000. So council could recommend, Council Strategy Committee could recommend to council that this be approved at tonight's meeting, or if you felt you wanted more information from staff or more time to think about it, we could bring it to the March 7th meeting. mean, this is going to form part of the budget, but this is the process. We usually have the formal process of saying that, yes, we agree that these are the municipal grants for 2017.
Yeah, okay, so there's a second motion on the table. I think we've seen everything, we've discussed everything before. I suppose the question really now is, in omnibus, are we good with this? Noting that last year the grant awards actual was 26.7, we're looking at 21.9, 22 in round numbers, for this year, so quite significantly less.
With the potential for 2,500 to be returned. I mean, I think it's appropriate to have it in the budget. I mean, if it's returned, that's a
Is
nice
it?
to have, but.
Yeah, and we
I
may
think-
choose to convert that to
Exactly.
a communication
Yeah,
item.
I'd rather be conservative and
Yeah,
have it in the
absolutely.
budget, and then if they return.
But if I was to take that out, that would make it 20,000 in round numbers. And the in-kind is staff time mostly, or whole rental?
It's hall rental, combination of hall rental and staff time, and we do this more, it's an in and an out. We
Yeah.
just want to be able to acknowledge that there was a cost.
Absolutely.
But it's a non-cash.
Okay, so any further discussion? So I ready for the question. So all in favour to recommend this grant schedule to council? Thanks, and opposed? So that carries.
So this will, just let you know, this is actually on the agenda as an on-table report. I will bring the report
The
to
same
tonight,
report, yeah.
and then we will just take that step of approving it formally.
Okay, now we're getting into the meat of the matter,
Yes.
and so there's a motion which I will read, that the report 2017 supplemental budget request be reviewed by the Council Strategy Committee and staff to determine what supplemental budget requests will be considered for inclusion in the 2017 budget. Can I have a second on that motion? Thank you. And Pam, do you want to
Yes, so.
lay the table here?
So what staff has done, we provided some additional information to some of the supplemental requests. We've tweaked a few numbers. There were a few additions to be made for the canoe trip and the bus shelter. But staff have now gone through, and that's what I'm hoping to do at this meeting, and we have recommended cuts, because kind of in the overall summary, we have total requests of the 375,000. The water's been already taken care of in the water budget, and plus we have an additional 14,000 that we've discussed at the closed meeting. I'm estimating the surplus to be about 310,000, so that is a shortfall of about 80,000. So we,
The surplus with a what kind of tax increase?
with a 5%
With a
tax
5%
increase.
putative tax increase,
Right.
okay.
So I was going to suggest we go through. Staff will bring forward their recommendations for cuts that could be made.
Do you have a schedule of
And-
suggested cuts?
I didn't put the schedule in. I have it here, and I thought we could just go through and discuss them, and I've got the tally.
Fine, okay. So we'll go to these individual budget sheets when they come up.
Yes.
So
yeah,
we'll start
if
on page
necessary.
33, the fire budget for 51.5.
Yes.
What do you
there's-
have there?
So I've talked to the fire chief, and he has one proposed cut. He said the laundry could probably last another year, so we could defer the 3,800 to 2018. So some of the things are cuts, some are actually deferrals. So he felt that that is one option on the fire budget, to deferring the 3,800 for the laundry to 2018.
Isn't this for a big honking laundry machine?
Well, they're industrial strength. It's a WCB requirement that after incidents, the uniforms be cleaned. So they have an industrial strength one now, but it was secondhand when they bought it years ago. So
Does
it's
it
gonna
work?
do-
It's not going to cost more than 3,800 to service
No,
when
I
it
did
breaks?
ask him that. I mean, this is something he had up. I mean, we could still do it this year, but
Yeah.
the idea is that we'll bring forward what we're recommending as possibilities we could cut or defer, and then we can.
Okay,
discuss
fine.
it further.
So I have questions about two of those other items. The tent to cover the truck, I'm fine with that, but did we speak about moving the record storage trailer, especially in light of the Arts Council's telling us that they don't want to use the space, moving the record storage into the room here?
That is an option now, since they don't want it, because there's really no place to move the trailer. I mean, we have looked at other options.
There's
but
not, no,
there's
but we
really
can
no
get
other-
rid of it if we move the records out of it.
We could.
Or move it into the works yard for additional storage, or up to the fire training or whatever. Okay, that's neither here nor there, because we still need the tent
Yes.
to cover the vehicle.
That's right.
And then the other question I had was, how is the security camera feed, where is it going? The
So-
$4,000 camera.
So the details are a little sketchy, but what we believe we can do is put up a continuous recording. So it's not going to be a live feed anywhere. It would just record. If there's an incident at the pit, at that point we could review. Otherwise, it would just continuously loop.
Unless the incident is a break-in and theft of the camera and its recording device,
The
which is
camera-
what crooks always do, of course.
The camera and the recording device. So the camera would be in a, in a protected housing, as would the hard drive and the computer running it. So theoretically, yeah, anything's possible.
Well, we survived this far without it, and quite frankly, I'd like to wait to see what the communication study tells us in terms of connectivity, to have the correct camera that just feeds into the control room, using our, what is going to, as you very well know, either radio or cellular, not wired,
Yeah.
right?
There is also the connectivity issues around moving the work shard up there, if that does come into play. So
Oh, and then, yeah, then you could probably put fiber optic, because it's only 100 yards up the road. Yeah. I would suggest we defer the security camera.
Okay,
And if Andrew says we can live without a $3,800 laundry machine, fine.
okay.
Anything else? What do we think about this?
Chief says it's fine, it's fine.
Yeah. I think the camera we can wait. We can probably halve the cost when we have better connectivity, understanding of our connectivity, and more security. I mean, the hard drive, that's the first thing that goes. You know, they chop down the pole, or they throw water in it, or whatever. That's what they do. Okay, let's move on then.
Okay.
So Pam, you've got the running total?
Yes, actually I need to add a potential 4,000 to that. Okay.
Just a question, is the 5,000 for rope training, is that for the materials, or is that for inspection, and is it ongoing?
It's it would just be for this year. They haven't had rope training for a while, so it would be for the instructional cost of the rope training.
I see.
Yeah.
Is that a one-day thing?
That I'm not sure.
So the
It
whole crew
was,
has to be there, otherwise they don't get the benefit of the $5,000.
Yeah, I don't think you could do it in a day. I think it would be over a
Yeah,
period of time.
yeah, that was my
So
understanding.
multiple
It would
lessons.
be multiple lessons.
Okay,
and-
that's good.
Okay. So
Okay, so we know all of this. Tell us what's
yeah.
changed.
So the detailed bridge inspections, it was 40,000 in total, but we had the 14.3 rebudget. So there were 8 inspections in total. So per discussions with NI, we could do 4 of the inspections in 2017 and 4 of the inspections in 2018. So that would reduce the budget by $20,000, because the total cost is 40. So the cost would then be $5,700 for this year with the 14.3 rebudget, and then $20,000 in 2018.
Okay.
So there's 20,000.
Mhm.
The Lions Bay Beach Park we've left as is. The Lions Bay Avenue stairs, I've added them in just so that we know they're there, but of course the idea is that we'll get 25,000 costs funded by the TransLink grant.
Now you'll have to reflect that in revenue.
Yes, exactly. Very similar to what I did. It's not here because it wasn't a supplemental, but the railway crossings.
Yeah.
I have the revenue coming in and then I have the costs coming out.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the proper. So I have the bus shelter here for 15,000. Staff flagged that as well for discussion, as there's a possible deferral to 2018, and then we could apply for another grant.
Do you get the sense that we could?
yeah, this isn't a one-time grant. It's an annual process.
I'd like to do it right. We need to discuss where. I don't necessarily believe that that's where. Before we move it here, we have a retaining wall discussion that we need to have. There's annunciators saying your next bus is coming. The service delivery model changes are not going to happen in the next 6 months, where it's a variable time bus. So much as we've had community requests, much as I'd like to do something obviously tangible, not pipes in the ground, I could see deferring that.
Okay.
What do you guys say?
Oh, no, that's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
The emergency generator, we have got some quotes on that, and 30,000 actually is a good figure. We may need 2 generators, one for the office and one for the hall, and we're also looking at used generators to keep the cost down. What staff is suggesting is that we budget 15,000 this year to put in a reserve, and then an additional 15,000 in 2018, and purchase it in 2018. Purchase either 1 or 2, depending. We have to have an electrician come out just to do not a study, but a,
Just
just to
Plan.
assess,
Inspect the
to
loading.
inspect and see if we need, and that will determine whether or not we need 2 or 1 generator. But we can do either 1 or 2 for 30,000.
It's a great pity that when we redid the hall, we didn't do this all at the same time. We've got an air conditioning unit that will cool the Titanic, but we don't have a generator.
I believe it was at one point on the list, and it was one of the many things that got cut.
So, you're just gonna call it a reserve?
Yeah, like we would tax for 15, and I would just put it into reserves. It would
Tax
be a
the 15,
transfer.
show it is what it is.
Put it into reserves, and then next year tax the 30 and show a draw from reserves of 15. So it would be 15 this year,
Okay.
15 that next
So
year.
it's,
Is there anything
And the,
grantable for generators?
We would
Yeah.
need to look into that, absolutely. For the community, marshalling point or, absolutely. We would be looking at EMBC.
Mhm.
Staff just haven't had the time to,
And that would be typically a 50% grant.
typically, yeah.
That's right.
If that's the case, I would prefer to find out the answer to that question and budget the other half, because let's assume that there is a half funding available, budget the other half, our half, next year.
Wouldn't that be pounds 15 to reserves then?
Yes, but we don't need to, because right now we're looking to put 30,000 in the bank. We actually only need to put 15,000 in the bank, so spend the 15 next year.
But if we don't get the grant, then we're,
Well, then,
Then
but
we
then
need
there's
to-
there's other funds coming available, self-loan funds, reserve replenishment that we could draw on in the next, let's say, 18 months. The whole equation will change next year.
okay,
Let's just draw a circle around that
Okay,
one for
sure.
now. It's quite a lot of money.
So it could actually potentially be minus 30 rather than minus 15.
actually, Carl, why don't you do a round of nods on this one, because, I mean, it's choice of 2. So, well,
Do the 15 this year, or 30 next year,
yeah.
or 15 next year if we do get a
Yeah,
grant.
it's just
And I
so-
would like to think a grant's available.
May I?
Yeah,
The,
please.
JET for a long time provided grants for all emergency services.
Who did,
Once-
sorry?
JET.
Oh, yeah.
Once the province started to download emergency management to municipalities, they provided a number of years to get JET grants, which is what we used to buy partially to buy the generator up at the Clap building. They stopped all grant funding about 2 years ago.
How much was that? Do you remember?
$75,000 ish.
You're telling me a $75,000 generator doesn't power the whole village?
Correct.
Should be covering your house.
The intent was they bought a large one because they thought it could, and then there were issues that it can't power this building as well.
It doesn't have the, I don't know why it costs so much, it doesn't have the load. There's maybe one circuit we could pull off that. We've had
Well,
an
you said so.
electrician out.
So just remind me, what is the power of that?
I'd have to get it to you.
The kilowatts?
Yeah, I don't know.
You were going to bring a guy in to come and look up the nameplate.
We did. We
And?
brought a guy, well, no, we brought a guy in to look at the generator and look at
The load here, yeah.
wiring it down to here.
Yeah.
But he said there's not enough power. There's not enough room in that generator.
Does he also sell generators?
No, he was just an electrician. Capable of doing the wiring. Yeah. But I can have
What is
that
the draw
sussed
in this
out.
building? I mean, the
There-
meter will
there-
tell us.
There are 2 services. One is a 200 amp and one is a 400 amp.
Yeah, but that's just current. What are we actually drawing in kilowatts?
Don't know.
Well, I'd like to know that before we start spending money on generators, to be honest. That's another reason to defer that. I need to see a bit more of a business case.
Yeah,
I
so
think
we,
that's right, I think we should defer.
we
Fred?
have provided information, anecdotal, the number
Yeah,
of
no, I saw that. Yeah.
furnaces, washers, etc. to the.
But in
consult-
emergency, you're not going to be running that stuff. You're not going to be running the heat,
Correct.
the
Yeah.
baseboards,
Yeah.
when the power's out. You're going to be on an emergency-only circuit, and you're going to keep the lights on, and maybe even
Well,
the stove.
we-
You wouldn't run the stove. 6 kilowatts? No, you'd
No,
be
unless
run
that's
propane.
where people are going though. I mean, that's
Yeah,
the
so you
idea
keep the
is-
lights on, and propane's emergency, whatever.
Um,
The point is,
Yeah.
here's council
Valid.
debating what the
Yeah.
business case is. We
Sure.
don't know.
But given the fact that it sounds like there are no grants available, I think
Well, from these guys, there's plenty of other fish in the sea.
there's plenty other, but
Well, we haven't
yeah,
done any research.
we haven't done
on
any
that.
research. But
So-
I wouldn't mind still for these purposes anyway, keeping the 15,000 going to reserves, and then we may not have to top it up in 2018, and that will tie into further on, because this is for emergency purposes, emergency management, with the other money we have in emergency management and someone coming and assessing what we need, we could get their advice on a generator as well. We'd have the money in reserves, and then if it turns out we could get a grant, because we're going to have to budget stuff for emergency services in 2018 as well. This isn't a one-year thing, so the money would be in reserves and we'd have it.
We're using
So-
1%, one of our 5 percentage
You're
points
building
tax
a-
increase.
You're
Yeah.
building a nebulous slush fund.
Yeah, it's
No,
a.
we're not. It's not nebulous at all. Our emergency management has been neglected a long time, and we've got money in the budget for it this year, but we'll probably need that much again next year. So worst case scenario, we get this generator funded or half funded. We already have the money for something we know we're going to have to do next year as well.
I just want to see a better business case. When I hear $75,000 generator for a fire building which has lights.
But that was in the past.
Yeah,
It clearly
no.
was
But that
a
means
mistake. Yeah.
something went wrong there. You don't spend 75 grand to power the lights.
It also powers the fire trucks and the BC ambulance who are housed there and constantly have all their trucks plugged in.
Yeah, but what are those?
It's not
It's
just
battery
lights.
charges. That's trickle charge. That's 5 amps at the most.
But we're not proposing a 75,000. We recognize that, and
Yeah,
we're
but
saying
so
that,
if 75 was
yeah.
misspent before, I want to
Uh,
be by others.
I don't know that it was
Yeah.
misspent.
They've come down in price a lot. Yeah.
I take your point. I would be happy to bring forward a report to council at the next meeting, outlining the specifics of that generator, the draw.
Well, maybe
and-
not next meeting, but sometime to justify a better business case. But right now we're talking about whether we're going to put 15 grand in reserves. That's a
Correct.
one plus more than 1% tax increase for a future potential. Well, I know we're going to have to buy a generator. It's just a case of who's going to pay for it.
2018 is looking to be a very, very jam-packed budget year. So I would just throw that out there.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
It
drawing
might
a
be nice
circle
to
around
put
this
the
one for
15
now.
aside now, and then we know we have it. Because the generator keeps being put off, and I think we'll find when we have that emergency management plan that that's going to be the top of the list, have a generator. You can have all the plans in the world, but if you know where to put people when there's an emergency.
Well, I like Pam's plan in as much for us, it's committing ourselves to the concept and setting a bit of money aside. We can work out the details before we buy anything.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't have a problem with that. Although I would suggest that if you think outside the box, for example, in an emergency where we have no power and we're gathering the village in the hall, we switch off everything in the fire hall and feed the power here with our $75,000 generator.
I don't know that you can do that. I'd want to check with the chief first.
Well, because the fire trucks are driving around, they're sure not there.
We want to check with the electrical inspector too on that.
Yeah.
Well, you'd have to obviously do an electrical.
May I? We have looked into that, you're not allowed to use it for this building.
Who says you're not allowed?
The
We
electrical
looked into it
inspector.
before because it's a different physical address, you're not permitted to use that generator for this building, we did look into it in great detail.
Permitted by who?
Could not do it.
Who?
The
Who?
powers that be.
Building.
We're the
code?
powers that be.
No,
No,
we-
building
we-
code or?
The building code.
It's the building code
It's-
part.
That's a
Yeah.
generator sitting on a pad,
Yeah.
15 feet away from a building.
Tell
It's
me
got nothing to do with the building.
Did it-
Yeah, okay, this is
Yeah.
starting to get more.
But-
I think we need a report.
Yeah.
In a
Correct.
But I
in a
think-
A
desperate-
believable report.
In a desperate situation, I think you can handle a
It is
press.
believable.
But aside from all that, my point is, next year, there will be an amount for an emergency management in the 2018 budget as well. So if we put the 15 in reserves, we find out that we don't need that much for a generator. We still have lots of time before next year to get a report on the generator. We'll have the money in the budget already for the emergency because emergency management is not a one-year thing. I think we've been really clear on that. This is an ongoing cost we're going to have. So,
Okay, let's
I
come
mean, I
back
would-
to this one.
Okay. Alright.
We're talking about whether to fund reserves or not, and we're not quite there yet. So,
And the
what
air-
else do we have?
Air compressor for works yard shop that the cost.
So give us
effect-
anything that's changed.
Okay, the backhoe. I had 21.6 in there. I think we can save about 6,400 because we're now decided it would make more sense to go for a used model. So I just I had like a $190,000 backhoe in there. I've lowered it to 125,000 for a used model. That's still ballpark.
You okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually Nye's recommendation and his staff's that
Yeah.
sometimes with the used
You're
you
not
can get
asking
more
for
bells
trouble?
and whistle.
No, these are backhoes that have relatively low usage hours, and they're certified through the dealer. So we would buy from a Cat or a Finning. We wouldn't buy from Ritchie Brothers auction, or these would be machines that have been
Certified.
absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
and then the savings would be higher in 2018, of course, because it was only ever half a year. So,
Question on that.
sure.
Is there any, any trade-in value of the Bobcats that would diminish your costs there at all?
Not really. The Bobcat is yeah, not. We'd be lucky if we got a couple of grand. right
I'll give
now.
you a couple of grand for it.
And then we'd want to keep it anyway, wouldn't we,
Yeah,
for the feud?
the intent is to keep it to load salt, etc. So as you're using it in the salt pile and whatever else to load the trucks,
It's going to disappear.
absolutely, yeah.
Dissolve.
So
Be no disposal costs at all, it'll just like,
Yeah.
part of the salt.
yeah,
The Bobcat has finally disappeared.
there you go.
Okay.
I hope it's a noxious weeds ate it.
The forklift replacement we've kept. The jumping jack compactor is removed.
Oh,
It is?
Yep.
Not here.
No, I meant on mine.
Oh,
That's
on your
recommendation.
secret list,
Yes,
okay.
on my, it's
The
a
secret
secret
we have
list.
to
It's
take
just
off
I'm now
it.
sharing.
Yeah. So these are the items that we had
Yeah,
discussed.
discussed that
to
we
get
feel
it
that
down
we can
to
Okay,
the-
fine.
The emergency lighting for works yard, again, we have, because there's the potential of the public works yard moving, we didn't want to spend a lot on that. So there's something we can do to meet our requirement
Yeah,
that we can just take from operations.
they're
we
just
wouldn't do.
battery powered lights that we can put up there
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
temporarily.
that's bound too.
Temporary's going to work.
Yeah, I mean,
Light is light.
yeah.
the hope is, yeah, they go on for about 45 minutes, which is more than enough time to evacuate the building. The intent is to relocate, so.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. So, okay, fine, good.
The AV suite for council chambers, staff have tentatively proposed that that be removed, subject to council's approval.
On what grounds?
On the grounds that we're trying to make cuts, and at this point, maybe we could delay that a year, or think about it.
You think
In
we don't
terms of
need
a
it?
true need versus a want.
Moving on. Updates to LiDAR map.
Kept that. The next cut was actually the chairs, and the reason we've cut that, although we're recognizing there's going to be some events where we don't have enough chairs, we physically have no room to put chairs in the storage room anymore. In fact, we're getting feedback that we may have a few too many now because when you pull the cart out, they tend to fall off the top. We've got 90 chairs. I did a count. Capacity of the hall is 110, so we really can't have more than 110 chairs. And if we do find we need one or two, it can just come from operations due to the cost. Okay, not too many other changes until the target solutions for fire department. We decided.
Well, we've got
Oh, sorry.
the Broughton Hall doors.
Oh yes,
That's
sorry.
new.
This was just the cuts, but yeah, we have to talk about. No, I apologize. The Broughton Hole threshold, actually, and humidifier for furnace. We're having the issues with the floor, and we've done a lot of work. Dave's done work on it, and we think it's just because the envelope is tighter. The floors are drying out, so the solution they feel is to put a humidifier on the furnace, and then there's just some of the thresholds will have to be repaired a bit. So the cost for that, and we have got quotes on this, is about $5,500.
Did we not tax last year for fixing the floor?
No, we did not. We got a quote for it, and we were going to fix it, but we didn't tax for it. We're going to try and swing it out of operations because it happened after the budget.
Okay, so $1 million. This number must be charged to $1 million hall renovation. I mean, imagine not putting a humidifier on your new HVAC system. But well, the floor is shrinking,
Yes,
and
and this is the recommendation
Getting
to
ruined.
repair it.
now I'm not convinced, of course, that that is the reason, because the fire chief gave us a different reason, did he not?
So we had a company come in. The building inspector met with them. They're a company that does resurfacing and repairs to floors. They identified the baseboards around the floor. The baseboards in the community center are actually attached to the floor, and they're not attached to the wall. So as the floor shrinks, the baseboard's pulling away from the wall. They're confident, and this is the company that resurfaces floors, that the floor is shrinking, and they've seen it before in other buildings. The bonus or the plus is that it is not a problem with the foundation. It's actually,
Well, that would be buckling, because the wood would be swelling, right? If there was water coming in. Yeah.
So it's actually, the floor is shrinking, and they have seen this in other areas. A humidifier will solve the solution, but it'll take about a year and a half to swell
Equilibrate.
the wood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think initially there was concern, Haley might be able to help me with this, that there might be a problem with the actual wall and the
Yeah.
foundation, and we've had several people look at that, and we've been told.
But that would be
and that was
swelling.
originally. No, I think they actually were concerned the wall might be cracked, or there might be something really seriously wrong,
Oh.
and we had that, and I think initially that's what the fire chief thought, and we've had, and the
Right.
fire chief is now on board. That actually goes well back a year ago, and we've had a lot of
This wall here
people
was
look
bowed.
into that,
Yeah.
and they have determined that they feel it's just dryness, because we do have a really tight envelope now. And that's causing the,
Really? You can feel
Okay,
the
relatively.
draft standing in there.
Have we suggested an expansion joint or anything around the?
well, I think
perimeter?
with the threshold, that's part of what they're gonna do with the thresholds as well. So part of this is a humidifier and replacing some of the thresholds.
But just back to the tight envelope, nothing's changed. The windows never opened before and the doors haven't been replaced, so the envelope has not changed. What may have changed is the efficiency of the HVAC.
My understanding is that insulation was added during the
Quite a bit of
renovations.
insulation.
How does that change the humidity?
Especially under the floor,
Because you have a vapor barrier that wasn't there before.
so the heat's not escaping.
It's for sure in the ceiling.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the ceiling's hasn't been touched. Well, maybe it has.
No.
So you're saying there's a vapor barrier now where there was not before?
There was a lot of things that weren't in the
Yeah.
original
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
I mean, you still might be able to feel a cool breeze, but the envelope is a lot tighter than it was.
But of course, the vapor barrier holds vapor in. Our problem is not enough.
If there is vapor within. I
has to be furnace.
defer to the experience and expertise of the building inspector who basically put us onto this and had the company come out, actually physically spoke with them, inspected the site, took a look at everything.
The floor guys said you need a humidifier.
The floor guys that would charge us $8,000 to fix the cracks and resurface the floor are the ones that said it's not worth it, because if we come in and do this, it's just gonna get worse. As the floor dries out more and more, whatever they do to put in to seal the cracks is just gonna start cracking again.
Okay, well, I'm fine with putting it in the budget, but what I would like to see is a log of the humidity for at least a month. Get a humidity meter, a logging humidity meter, and let's see what it is. And if it's anywhere near 20%, 25%, it's not the humidity, it's something else. So, you know, to shrink wood at the rate that that's shrinking, and I don't know if you guys have seen it, I mean, there's 1/4 inch gaps between the planks.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really shrinking.
It's doing the volleyball. It's not in a specific area. It's everywhere.
Yeah, no, and as nice as the baseboards are a good inch away from the wall in some cases. But
Yeah.
to have that level, I mean, you're talking about humidity around 5%.
I'm not sure.
So let's find out.
Okay,
So let's leave it in.
yeah, but then,
That's your reserve right there.
um,
Now the next one,
yeah, because I
I
actually,
believe that was the evil eye.
it was next item on the list, Broughton Hall doors and locks. So again,
Okay, so
I'd
we've
like
seen the
to
report
defer
there.
to
Yeah.
Nye on this.
who wants to say it first?
Ouch.
$7,000 for a door?
$7,000
Doors.
for 4 doors,
Four
4
doors.
panels.
Oh, both doors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, okay, that's a little better.
Yeah.
Actually, I thought you were gonna say 7,000 just because the lock doesn't work.
Well, the doors are,
It's actually more than that,
the doors
yeah.
are not the greatest of doors for
That's what
Lions
triggered
Bays.
it, was
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
lock.
It
So
looks like a bloody prison.
So basically, you can grab the middle of the door where the latch is and the top of the door and flex the door, and
Now you're gonna have to fix it.
it does have to be fixed. Yeah.
Fire rated doors then.
No.
And what material would the doors be made out of?
Steel. Yeah. Nice,
Not-
beautiful gray steel.
Not hand carved oak, I just assume.
I believe that we're able to source used doors, steel doors, from a correctional facility in Richmond somewhere.
Perfect.
Nice catch, eh?
And is it the right color of steel?
I assume we're gonna paint it a color
This would be fire rated steel doors, yeah.
With, I'm sure, a variety of personal messages on the door.
Moving on, we've added on the pulling together canoe.
Well, no,
journey.
hang on a second. I mean, this is a big number. This is close on a 1%
Oh, I'm sorry,
tax
I
increase.
didn't mean to jump on, I just thought you were finished. Yeah, well, just the lock's not working, that's what triggered it.
And we have to replace the
And-
doors to replace the locks.
The doors are not to code. They need to be proper doors.
Just remind me what our renovation cost for the hall?
I don't know.
$1 million, I'll tell
It's
everyone.
Okay.
million. You put non-conforming doors.
Yeah, I don't know if the doors were replaced, were they?
I don't think
No.
those
They were
are
in
in
They
the
were not.
budget, they were in the budget and got taken out of the budget.
Yeah, so the doors are the original doors.
along with the
Um,
generator.
We've got a
just-
vapor barrier for
The
$1 million.
doors, the price of the doors in the quote is $800, so the cost is not in the doors, the cost is in the panic
Mechanism.
hardware. Right?
Well, I know you're being frugal here. It just seems like a heck of a lot of money for 4 doors,
Yeah.
which are not going to be any improvement visually or otherwise, functionally, of what we have.
So each of the doors will have a panic window within it, and basically it's bringing them up to code. So the current thoughts are that without that, if you push the door open, there have been lawsuits for people pushing the door open and hitting somebody. So the windows provide that view, so you can see if somebody's outside behind the door.
Oh, sure, people are vulnerable.
Correct.
I mean, I'm thinking when you're panicking,
And the panic hardware alone is each panic hardware piece is $1,500.
that I can see.
So they're not
Just
cheap.
the sticker price.
So that's what you're paying for is the panic hardware. Like I say, 4 doors, 4 panel doors is $800. So
4 code door.
4
Yeah.
doors, 4 separate doors is $800.
But now to code for the first time.
Absolutely.
So how did we manage to get that the occupancy permit if the doors were not to code?
They might have been to code at the time. Is that a
Maybe.
new
I don't know.
requirement?
2 years ago. Building code hasn't changed since then.
The building permit was nothing to do with the doors, it was just to do the seismic upgrade. That was the only thing attached to the building permit.
Oh, because the doors weren't touched, so they weren't inspected, yeah.
And they wouldn't have been anyway, because it was just, you wouldn't need a building permit to replace something in the same place.
Okay, what about keypad entry? To alleviate keys being replicated.
Haven't looked into that.
The one problem with that, though, I think you're actually safer with keys because then there's people sharing
Code.
the code because we have a little code for the shed back there and people let themselves
Yeah,
in
but that's an
and borrow
unsophisticated. I'm
chairs.
talking about a little more sophisticated where it expires after a week or after a month or annually or
But then
whatever.
the administration of letting everyone know the new password.
Well,
With
they're
a
gonna
lot
get
of
to know the new
traffic through
password.
there. But there's a
Yeah.
lot of
Or
traffic
you give
through there.
people a universal one or a master one or whatever the number is.
I would-
People use electronic locks for a reason, obviously.
Yeah, I would want to know if we've had problems with the keys in the past before we go that route.
No, because this is Little Lions Bay. I'm sure half the village has a key to the hall.
No, half the village is not. Like I say, we have more of an issue where you have the padlock where people know the code. They get into it and they said, oh, I needed tables this weekend, so I'll just take some tables. Like we want everyone to come through us and have to get a key
How'd they
to
get
do
into
the
the hall?
paperwork. They knew the code. At the back, we have
The
some
shed.
tables in the shed as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually have more issues that way. We want people to have to come and have the process of getting the key
And then returning it.
and then returning it and then paying their fees up
I
front.
just don't want to spoil the ship for half a penny worth of tar. Seeing as we're spending $7,000, let's do it properly, finally. If that
Yeah.
is in fact there's a case for it
I would recommend staying with the keys.
with keys. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that because you're conservative or because it's better?
It's
we've got a
because I want to be
security
conservative
control.
as well. I'm very cognizant of the fact that we're cutting. And
And you're a key kind of guy.
yeah, I love keys.
We've added the pulling together canoe journey lunch of 2,500. And the next change or the recommendation is for the target solutions for the fire department to remove that after discussions with the fire department. We're not sure it's quite the right software package and we're not quite ready for it. So we're just recommending.
Why is
removing
this
that.
not in the fire budget?
It was just because the recommendation came from staff. I mean, it could go into the fire. It wasn't, there's a few things in here that could probably be in the fire budget, but
Okay, so take out that 4,000 completely.
yes.
Okay.
And then we have the fire review. We are rebudgeting 5,000, but I'm not sure what we could use the 5,000 for in terms of fire review. I think we found last year it really wasn't enough to do anything. So I was suggesting we use the rebudget to offset the 5,000 for records management. We had asked to rebudget 15,000 for records management plus add another 5. So I was going to suggest we take the 5,000 fire review, we budget and put it into records management. Some of that records management will be for fire, so.
Okay, so now talking about records management,
Yes, and we do have a separate piece on the records
Yeah.
management.
so we 2 years ago funded a PO system, and a year ago funded some other system, both of which never got implemented for reasons we never really heard. What's going to change here? Who's going to actually run the records management system?
Well, there's two components to the records management. Initially, in this first year, the biggest is to do scanning of old documents. We've got quotes on that, and that will be about $15,000 to start scanning.
So that's
our
a contractor.
electronic and that's a contractor.
And who puts the
And-
taxonomy, the library system together? Who decides the Dewey Decimal Classification System for us?
It would be a joint venture with RICO and with ourselves.
And it's standard,
Yeah,
so they do municipalities all the time?
correct.
Okay.
And then we have $5,000 for a consultant to come in to just sort of set the framework, and then the staff. So that's not really buying. And going back to that purchase order system, we did exchange it with Maze and got the fixed asset system instead for just a nominal charge. Like they gave us quite a large credit for the purchase order system.
Yeah,
And
I
that was the
wasn't
only
so much
one.
worried about the money, and I know we got the money back. It's the resource.
Right. It wasn't so much a resourcing with purchase orders. I think once we took a look at it, we realized it was more than we needed. But you're right, it is a good point in terms of, that's why we want the consultant in, because you could argue we have the knowledge to do a records management system ourselves, but we just don't have time. So this person would come in and sort of a records management specialist and kind of jumpstart it, saying this is their recommendations for setting up the files, and then we would implement it. So
How
a
long do
lot of
they-
time the original hurdle is just determining how you're going to set it up. So if we had someone to come in and do that for us.
This is about a week at $100 an hour.
So you spoke of the Dewey Decimal System for the archiving of the documents. In that initial phase, developing the file structure, the file naming convention, the retention dates, all of that needs to be done ahead of time so that we can apply that to the scanned
It's
documents.
got to be a standard, otherwise you're guessing it.
Yeah,
And would this be scanning all plans?
yes.
Everything.
Potentially. This is just the first step of what we've identified as critical things. We've got a lot of maps that, and as-built drawings
That won't last.
and water files
Yeah.
and,
No. Well, I don't need to tell you that in order to use those, you now need big screens, you need fast computers, so this is just the tip of the iceberg.
The PDF files are relatively small in size. The
Yeah,
compression
but
has changed.
unless you're scrolling, I mean, if you've got a plan this big, if you actually want to see it in the detail that you can use, you're scrolling over a normal computer screen, you're scrolling. You need big screens.
Yeah.
But, okay, so one thing at a time.
Well, I was just thinking, for the records management, it's not so much a consultant that you're advocating hiring, it's like a records management specialist.
yes.
A librarian, really.
Yeah, not to mince over words or anything.
no,
but I think the concept of bringing in yet another consultant
Yeah.
is getting a little tiresome.
Yeah, I'd probably misuse the word. I think it was just someone who's an expert in it, who's done it before, who has the efficiency, who has the templates, who could just come in, help us with the structure, and then we would just take it from there.
And we know
just
of such people?
jumpstart it. Yes, we do.
Comes with the contractor?
No, they're separate.
They're
They're
independent?
separate.
No.
Yes.
Yeah, one specializes in local government
Mhm.
and the other is just a standard document.
Okay, well, this is
Process.
a project I'd spend more if we could, so this is something
Well,
that's long overdue.
I think we've indicated it is more than a one-year project, so this is the initial, we'd get it set
Yeah,
up.
fair enough.
Kind of learn what we don't know, and then, again, put it in the budget for the 2018, kind of like the emergency management as well, that we've identified some things that we need to start dealing with that will be ongoing.
So
for a
just
while.
correct me if I'm wrong, so the content will be indexed, you can search for it by word?
Correct. Yeah.
Please give me all documents that speak to Debris Hazard at...
Yeah, I don't recall if the maps will be fully
Yeah, yeah.
OCR'd, but portions of it, the title block will be. I don't know if you remember that discussion?
It depends if we decide to go with the laser fiche, and that's not in this budget request.
Okay.
The laser what?
The laser fiche, that's not in this request.
Okay. So,
But do we lose something by not doing it from the get-go?
no. So, I believe the title block will be included in the search, just not the content of the drawing.
Okay, that's exciting. I like it. What do we think? So you want to take the $5,000 away from what again?
From the
Target
fire
fund.
study.
From
No,
the fire study, and instead of
Okay.
putting it in
And-
reserve for another fire study, use it for
Well,
this
we would have
instead.
just let it
It's just
flow.
repurposing the
I'm
old-
repurposing it. So basically, the records management, the 20,000 we've asked for this year, will have no tax impact in this year. We're using a 15,000 rebudget and a 5,000 rebudget to come up with the 20 and put it towards records management.
Yeah, great.
So
Fine.
you're just scratching.
Yeah, you're thinking.
He's not sure.
Trying to kickstart it.
Let me just.
Sure.
Yeah, and just to allay any lingering fear about the fire study, I'm happier than I was because we had Flinro come in and look at the wildfire fuel load. It's not as bad as I feared in my inexpert look at down the hills. So we can wait, I think, on a fire study. Okay.
And then the housing needs assessment, with discussion with staff and Peter, we feel this isn't the year to do that. So we've removed the housing needs assessment.
Good.
And the records management, like I say, we're saving 5,000 there if we repurpose the 5,000 as we've discussed. Now I have to actually add something back. The $8,000 land surveying, the reason I had taken it out, we were still going to do it, but PSAB allows you to have costs incurred for land that's for resale, and you can put it into an asset, but the sale has to be imminent. So for that, we thought to be conservative, we should put the 8,000 in. There's a chance we could recover it, but we didn't want to tie our hands. Like we'll have a variety of reasons to survey land, and it may not be always be imminent sales.
But is that not
So-
just a cash flow issue for which reserves are more than adequate? We don't need to.
No, I would
tax
actually
for
have to-
cash flow.
It's not really cash flow. I thought it was going to be cash flow. That's why I removed it. But if it's for land that isn't potentially for resale this year, then we do have to expense it. So it's not cash flow, and then we can't defer it against the land. So it has to be within the year, because there's a piece of property this year we knew we were selling and we were incurring costs.
Yeah, and then
We
recover it
could
in the
offset
next
it,
year.
yes.
But okay, fine.
But PSAB's gotten really strict on that.
So
It has
we-
to really be within
and
12
we have to
months.
break even, yeah,
And the
okay.
auditors actually look for evidence that the land's been put up for sale. And so Peter and I discussed this. There is a chance 8 might be a bit too much if it happens to be a piece of land we end up selling. But thought to be conservative, we should add it back in.
Well, in theory, we get it back the next year, even if we don't get it back in the same year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's again. Yeah. So it's not a reserve only issue if it's in different years. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So so that was it. So all
Asset
of-
management plan. Just remind us what
Oh, yeah.
that is.
The asset management plan, I did done that. That actually is now a requirement for municipalities to start having. I mean, you want to do it anyway. It's the right thing to do, but also we're at the point where they're laying down the hammer. And for example, the gas tax funding, we will have to have an asset management plan in place probably within the next couple of years to qualify for gas tax funding. And even with the clean water grants that we just applied for, there was a whole section on what where we are with our asset management plan. We weren't required to have one, but there were a lot of intense questions on where we are. And basically, it's just the right thing to do. We had our first step, which was TCA, getting an inventory of our assets and determining the historical value. We now want to be able to put in what the replacement value is and be able to calculate how much we need to be putting aside to be able to replace our assets. Plus, there's a good mechanism in it for tracking maintenance, which I worked on with NI, which will tie into the core services review and how we want to maintain our assets. And we've got the one piece already, the fixed asset module from Maze, which we're sort of able to trade in with a little bit of extra cost for our purchase order system. And we're not ready to implement that yet because we have to have this inventory of assets.
Yeah. So this implementation that I see mentioned here in the business case, what is that? A person? Who does it?
Oh, we would implement the Maze fixed asset module. I mean, there might be a nominal charge to Maze
So what's the
to help
cost?
us.
What's the 20,000?
The 20,000 is to start valuing the replacement value of our assets. So it's addressing the things the IMP didn't address.
Yeah, but who's
We've
that
got
money
the-
being paid to?
It'll be a contractor.
Okay, so it is a contract.
Yes, yes,
Not,
and people
okay.
who specialize in coming in. It's really the equipment and the buildings that weren't in the IMP that we need to get a proper inventory on. And all municipalities are struggling with this. They had their initial TCA, but now they're almost having to go back and double check the inventory because it was done, even though we had several years, it was done very quickly. And so this is the critical first step. It's almost to bring us up to the starting point.
Yeah.
Valuing our assets and getting a true replacement value of them.
But I assume the TCA inventory is the starting point.
Oh, absolutely, and it's accurate. It's just that's definitely the starting point.
And we've
But,
kept it up since we did it, which was about
Oh
6
yes,
years
oh
ago.
yeah, no, you have to keep it up. That's the starting point, but it's more at determining the replacement value. which other than what was done in the IMP, we don't know the replacement value of basically our buildings, the condition of our buildings. So it's not just the replacement value, it's the current condition and determining when we will have to replace them and our equipment.
To the extent that policy is that we set reserves aside to do that, or whether we raise
Yes.
new loans, but
Yes.
that's a different question.
But you have to know what you need to, the dollar value, what you need to replace, and then that falls out of that is the asset management plan on
Yeah.
how you're gonna fund that.
Okay, so 20,000 will get us,
Phase one.
and
that'd be
phase one will be useful to us,
Oh, absolutely, it's determining, like I say, almost the starting
Critical.
point, it's the most critical aspect.
but it's not half a project. That gives us something to work with.
Oh, absolutely.
And then next year we spend the same again?
We don't know, we'll know more after we find out the state of our assets, get the maze up to date, and then we'll figure out what the next stages is of the asset management plan.
Okay, well, this is all
But all
just part of growing up.
municipalities are struggling, this isn't a unique to Lions Bay.
No,
It's
I
the
know.
hottest topic right now is this asset management, but it is a critical link to grants, like in Ontario now, they're a couple of years ahead of BC. And I took this course on it that I discussed at the GFOA conference, and you have to have an asset management plan to even apply for grants now in Ontario.
Yeah, I can see
So
why.
like I say, it's the right thing to do, but we also kind of don't have a choice.
Fine.
So, and then the by-election, I put in
Yeah, you have to add that.
$10,000. So the total was, and then we also have, as I discussed, the 14,000 on top of that, just for those items we discussed in the closed meeting. So it comes up to about $85,000, and then if we take off or add in sort of the $4,000 that we talked about for the camera at the pit, brings up to 88,000, and then 15,000 possibly for the generator. But another way,
15,000 instead of 30,000.
well, a reduction of 15.
Yeah,
So now
reduction of 15.
you're suggesting reducing the whole 30.
Potentially.
Potentially.
So that number, that 80,000 something, takes out 15,000.
No, it started as 85, we've added in 4, and then if we add in another 15, if we say we're doing nothing for the generator, it brings it up to about 104,000. And with the surplus we have, we're short about 80,000, so it would give us about 20,000 more than we needed, which ironically I would recommend going into reserves. So by that argument, we might want to just to keep tax for the 15 to go into reserves for the generator, since it's going to end up in the same
You're
place.
killing me.
Yeah, but at least it's not earmarked.
You followed it. I'm impressed that you followed.
I
So
agree.
then just back to the SCADA study.
Yes, and then we have the water. Yes, sorry.
So let's just
no
recap before we go on here. So, in that you're the only one with the secret sheet and you've done the calculation.
Yeah, I
here.
wasn't
So
trying. I guess
let's
I
just
should have
go
handed out
with me on
copies to
this one.
everybody.
Go with me on this one. So far, you managed to, we're back to the 15 for the generator for the tail end reason that you mentioned. And Carl's TV is kicked, and that's the only thing that's left to talk about.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, that number includes, just assuming that council will agree to the AV suite coming out?
Yes, like I say, these were just suggestions. So
Well, it's
all
very
of the
hard to work with
suggested-
when we don't have
No,
the secret sheet.
Yes, I thought it would be too misleading if I put it out there in the package. Like if this was the purpose, is
Well,
to
it's
discuss
easier
the
for you.
cuts.
This is not misleading at all.
No, it's
We almost agreed on
I,
losing the AV suite.
Should I go take a copy of this for everybody? Or?
No, not to worry
No,
now.
no,
It's
it's, we're
discussion.
down to the end
Yeah,
here.
it wasn't my intent to be misleading. It was to generate discussion. You came up with some cuts as well, and just to give you sort of a
All right.
ballpark.
Why don't we do a pro-con here on the AV suite, and we'll let you go
Okay.
with the con, and then Carl can go with the pro.
Oh, I'm
I'm
not going to
just-
say it again. I've said it enough times. So give
What?
us the con, other than the cost.
Or that I was looking for things to cut, and I didn't feel it was completely necessary. That was all. I mean, I haven't thought of many times we've been in here where we thought, I wish we had something we could display something on. I'm
I
not
have.
saying no forever, but
There's a projector screen right there.
it's a projector screen which we've used quite successfully, and when we've had meetings here.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking something a little more sophisticated. And more for committee meetings, so that people can bring stuff up on
Mhm. Yeah.
a Chromecast.
I'm not saying
or-
it doesn't have merit. It was just these were just
What was
proposals.
the number
all of
again?
them. 3,000.
Yeah,
Oh,
Four.
for
Four.
the
4. See, I
Three.
don't think it's going to be anywhere near that.
3.
No.
No, it was 3.
Was it three?
Three,
With
three.
wiring and the whole 9
That's
yards?
putting it in, yeah, I guess we
It's
did.
a 60-inch TV screen. 3.
Well, those are $1,000 plus labor plus a Chromecast stick. That's $35 now. Yeah, it won't come in at 3. I think we could do it for 2. I think it's, now I know you want to make this the Holy of Holies.
It is the Holy of Holies, and it's not my choice to make it that. It's established.
It's a working meeting room. I'd like to keep it in.
Okay.
I'm prepared to go to 2.
Well, I want a realistic number in there too, though.
No,
So
I mean,
what are we-
I
with
think
installation
that the
and-
reason we wanted to keep it at 3, if we do go for it, is if there is gonna be a case cabinet around it, or is it just gonna be,
No, just flat mounted on the wall.
right, so basically flat mounted behind the flags?
Well, the flags would have to move.
Well,
I know that's going to be it's going to be hard.
We're required to have them, and there isn't a lot of space in here to put them. They go
They
in
can
the
go with
corner,
that
I
screen
guess.
stuff.
So I mean, we could put a cover around it that, with opening doors,
Remote control.
to hide it.
Yeah, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
We keep it in.
The $700 drop-down screen for the hall. That's
Yeah.
that's
that-
not wired and that's not installed.
No, so.
And that is a little more of a not very.
It's a bit problematic determining how to hang it, and
Yeah.
And wire it, because we will have to run wire to it. So
Well, there's conduit all over the ceiling there, but
I don't know what's in the conduits and what they.
Yeah, I agree.
So
so maybe a trade-off.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I really think that it looks very amateurish, but then we are amateurs. You know, showing on the rickety screen on the cardboard box in the hall when we're trying
It's
to.
our charm.
It's
part of our
charming.
charm.
It's charming. So okay, so
7 minus 7,
I
but
can
keep,
take that up.
but take the 7 off.
And you also took the whole chairs out. Are we okay
Yeah.
with that, Council? I don't
Yeah,
care really.
That was really
I-
more. We can.
I always get a chair.
Yeah.
I always give mine up.
Well, the November 11th, I stood
Yeah.
the whole time.
Yeah.
Well-
It's a logistics thing. We just don't have room for them anymore.
Well, it's funny
And-
because I look at that and I see lots of room, especially if we were to make slots for them, build
We'd
some
need
slots
a-
in.
We need a whole other, what is that, pallet thing to
Cart.
put them on, cart to put
Yeah,
it
I
out.
assumed we need
And
another
it's,
car.
and no, really, there's no room in there, because you have to have,
Carl,
you
make
have
the
to go
hard
in.
call on your AV or chairs.
No, I can live without the chairs. And
But if we do need a few, I mean, we still have
let
to
me tell you,
budget
our
for
chairs
them.
are a heck of a lot better than Squamishes. Man, it takes about 5 minutes to stack one chair at Squamish, as I discovered the other day.
All right. So,
Okay.
to rehash,
Okay, so so
the 15,
the 15 is what we got before us now.
okay, so the AV's in, the chairs are out, everything
Chairs are out,
else on the
The-
secret.
Screen's
the
out.
projector's out, that's the.
Projector's
the
out, so
screen's
everything
out.
else on the secret list is in, and we do the 15 of the 30 for the generator, and it gets padded into, oh no, it's not a slush fund, but, oh yeah, it is.
Can I give you an update on the generator? It's part of the fire code. You can only have one generator for one building. So you cannot use the one at the clock for any other building. I just got it confirmed.
Okay, so we cut off the clap building and switch over. Get a big Y switch. It goes like
You
so
know what?
overboard sewer or pump out
Right.
sewer.
So
We don't-
basically then, we'll all be safe in the little recreation room when the building burns around us, because we
Alright.
don't have a fire
Okay,
department.
so I think we've grasped it.
Okay,
Done. And
So-
so with that being said, the number would be just changed for the amount for the
be about 90,000.
AV less the chairs.
Yeah.
So what's the bottom line then, instead of your 324?
Where's your list to add,
Yeah, like basically, we had the surplus of 310, we had to cut about 80, and we're cutting about 90. That's with keeping the 15,000 in.
Sorry,
for
say
the
those first two
generator.
numbers again. We have a surplus of 310. Yes.
So with the surplus of 310, which will be confirmed at the next meeting when I do present the fourth quarter review, we had a shortfall of about 80,000, and with these cuts, keeping the 15,000 in for the generator,
Oh, okay.
it
That's
brings us
shortfall of 80. Yeah, got
to
it.
about, we're cutting about 90. So we still have a bit of a cushion there. Oh, and the other piece I was going to add was with this budget, just sort of a reminder to council, I think staff were really diligent going through, and Public Works manager particularly, with regard to his areas, we identified the areas we'd consistently been over budget, and it was some sort of contracting fees, and we've cut all that. But we now have a very bare bones budget, so it might be nice just to have a little bit of a cushion in there in case I feel we've really cut this budget down to the kind of the bare bones.
Well, a budget is a
Um,
plan. Let's not get confused between cash flow and what we want to spend our money on. And I'm sure I speak for council, our concern is, will this money get spent? Because the last time we saw a cash projection, I think we'd spent well under half of what we'd planned on by the end of the year. So let's not over budget if we can't actually spend the money. So I'm now confident that a lot of this money had better be all
Yeah.
spent.
It will be spent, but I'm talking about the base operating budget, and it is, just our best guess, but we can't go over budget. So if something
Yeah.
comes up, then I have to come back to council and ask for that money, and we have to draw it from reserves.
But
Like,
that
we've
surplus
removed our
money has to
cushion.
be it has to be earmarked for something. Or have we got a new line?
Right, so-
Unclassified expenses that we're budgeting for.
No, I'm not suggesting we put a contingency or anything. I'm just saying that by having a little bit of extra money that I'm budgeting to go to surplus, and we have that cushion that we can draw on, if
Oh, so we
Yeah.
would put it to surplus at the end of the year if we
yes.
didn't use
Yeah, I'll just have it budgeted as a transfer to reserves. It's not a contingency. That'll be a transfer to reserves, and then
okay.
not really, because next year what I'm hoping is we'll have the asset management plan, and we will actually start budgeting very large amounts to reserves to start covering future asset purchases. And I'm not talking about even 100%. We have to start saving for.
Well, that's a different discussion in
It
light
is.
of developments elsewhere. I will also say that I think I reflect council's wishes that we short circuit some of the spiraling in on a budget. I think we could probably dispense with at least 2 of the meetings that we've had by having a deadline for wish list.
An AV system, plugging the numbers and going through it.
Mhm.
We would need a secret list then.
It'd be live.
And that being said, your point's well taken, and this year, I'll point out, we are about 2 meetings ahead of where we were last year.
Yes,
I think
I
we
know- we
spent
know
4
that, yeah.
meetings last year on supplementals, so my recommendation is that to councils, if they're happy with this, I then put it together, and then at the next meeting, it could even be a council meeting, it doesn't have to be a CSC. I present the budget with all of these rebudgets and with all the supplementals in it. We see what the bottom line is. We'll also present the 4th quarter review, so we confirm in what the supplemental. And then, even though we don't have to do this, we've had a practice of council then approving the 2016 portion of the 5-year plan. The
Yeah.
5-year plan will then come probably towards the end of March. But, and that's actually the bylaw that we adopt, but by doing that, some of these expenditures we can start now, and then that ties into council's desire that we make sure we spend all this money this year, so we can
And we don't
start
tread water
some-
for the first 4 months of the year.
We can start actually,
And
acting
could
on
you
some of
actually
these
now,
projects.
do you need some sort of holding resolution that allows you to spend on these things? Or can we not approve this next meeting?
well, that was my proposal, that we did this last year as well, that in the next meeting, I'll present a budget that has all of this in it now, rather than as a separate piece, and then council
Resolve to
they
support it.
resolve to
And then the
say
bylaw
that
comes
the
later.
tax rate is X percent,
Yeah.
and this is the 2016 budget.
So in terms of 2016, have you nailed down the surplus now, or the unspent money?
Well, that's why I'm estimating that for the 2016 year itself, there was about a $310,000 surplus.
And you think that's
And
pretty
that,
tight number now?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I mean, that was ignoring the rebudgets, because we're going to have a surplus from 2016, but then it's going to be used for the rebudgets.
Everything rolls
And-
back. We're not killing any project.
Right. No.
I think.
It's just some that we
Or
chose
a
not
project
to
that's
well,
leading to project B.
Yeah, some we're repurposing, like the fire
Yeah,
brand.
like the fire
And then you'll
thing.
have a comprehensive list of everything that was rebudgeted, but essentially it'll be, all these little pieces we looked at in isolation will be into the 2016 budget. 17, oh, sorry, I keep saying 16. 17, I apologize, the 2017 budget.
Fine. So just one last thing is that's the SCADA communications plan for 23.5 is the cost of the plan, right? My question is, what if the study ends up being not cellular? Then you've allowed for $5,000 to improve cellular communications. But if the SCADA study says our SCADA system is not going to be cellular, it's going to be something else.
Right.
Presumably the only other wireless technology, well, there's microwave, there's laser, and there's radio. It's going to be
Right.
one of those, and most likely radio if it's not cellular. Does that not then negate the $5,000 study altogether?
No, I mean, that $5,000 is earmarked. I don't really know what the full cost is. I'm still waiting for information back from that consultant that we had talked about.
But it's almost a
but
separate
whether-
project, isn't it?
But whether it's radio or cellular, the infrastructure is still required. So let's assume that it's radio. If that is the result that comes back, we still want to push a cellular tower.
A tower.
Such that we can mount our radio antenna on that tower.
Okay.
So it is critical. It will defer the capital cost of a tower.
So what do we need the 5,000 for? Surely the vendor just does that work?
I'm not sure.
Oh, so you said that. It's
Yeah,
almost a
we're
contingency.
asking. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
fine.
So any surplus will go back to us. So it's not
Fine. And so that 23.5 is in here.
correct.
Yes.
Just a question about the cell tower though, is that, wouldn't a cell company do all the study to put in a tower at their advantage, at their cost?
Correct. I just don't know. I'm waiting for information back. So in order to further this, we've just put that number in there. It may be that they pay for everything, and in that case, that funding will not be spent.
Right.
Right?
And in terms of the water budget, that's why, like you can see we have this total of 48,000, but we've just budgeted 45. And if it turns out that, the cellular communication isn't needed, then we don't have to spend the 45. But what we would do is we would just adjust some of these other items that are like the blow-offs and the cameras for the intake and the turbidity meters. We're going to adjust the quantity of which we purchase of those to come into the 45.
Yeah.
So the 5,000 would be used for something else if we didn't need it.
Now, don't you want to put a number in, a guest number for the cameras?
No, I don't believe so. Not right now.
Because we've got about 10 grand to play with.
Within the regular operating, the water budget's already done. So
Oh.
it's
yeah.
separate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would be water budget item.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay. Got it? Okay, is that it?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. This is a lot less painful than it used to be. Maybe that's because we're...
Pam, off the CapEx stuff, but for the other parts of the budget, such as the personnel cost, will you be bringing that to us along, or no?
Well, in terms of the overall personnel costs, we've done the labor model. We've estimated what it sort of is what it is to a certain extent. I can bring a labor model to a closed meeting at the next council meeting. It's essentially the staff in place. We don't have a contract in place, so we're just looking at other agreements, and we've just budgeted what we anticipate the contract will be.
Okay.
And there were no additional staff in that for this year.
No employees,
No
but we're
additional.
talking about a planner and we're talking about the records
Yes.
management. So we're
Yes.
talking quite a few
Yeah,
contractors.
contract position, but in terms of, Nye will be bringing forward within the next month probably a core services review.
Okay.
And that's what we wanted to look at so that we, because I think it's a big decision if we decide we want to request another staff member, and that's what we would do for the 2018 budget if we deemed it necessary.
Okay, I can go a different way. I think we're
Okay.
going in camera tonight when we get the dial in, I think,
Mhm.
on something. Okay, that's fine. I'll
Okay.
bring up my issue
Okay,
then.
okay.
We'll just bring additional grounds, which would be
And
C.
one point I want to
on
talk
labor,
about,
yeah.
and,
Or D.
and I guess this is for my colleagues here too, on that. For me, it's been well over a year and change since the chief has talked to us. I wouldn't mind, for me, a state of the nation from him. If
I agree.
it doesn't have to be like in line with the budget stuff per se, but I think
Yeah.
sometime in the next.
Yeah, I think you
Well,
represent the budget request quite well, but I think we would like to understand what's happening with our fire
Yeah.
department,
Well,
which is a $400,000 a year.
Yeah.
I mean, we get
Cost
the
center.
benefit of having another operating unit's
No, exactly.
chief here, so I
Yeah.
mean, the piece missing.
Well, Haley had an excellent point. She brought it to my attention that in the past, prior to me being here, I believe he used to come regularly, and we were even going to suggest quarterly. It could even tie into me during the quarterly review, having him come and do to a council meeting, giving kind of a quarterly state of the nation.
Well, we do get the fire services report, which I have been asking for some time. It's a little enhanced because they don't tell us much
Yeah.
in terms of the training of our people or the longevity or the years of service and all that stuff. It sort of tells us the number of calls they went on.
Yeah.
But maybe, I'll talk to Peter about that,
Yeah.
in terms of enhancing but not wasting time.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I think it would be, I mean, we have Nye representing Public Works, me
So,
representing Peter, but having the chief come.
If we can leave that with
Yeah.
admin to ask the chief to, at a time of his convenience,
Yeah.
whenever that is.
Okay, so do you remember, Shwana, did I make the motion to do the supplemental budget? I think I did,
You did.
and it was seconded. So any further discussion? The recommendation is that we determine which supplemental budget request will be considered for inclusion in the 2017 budget. That's the only resolution. We're not going to bring it forward as a recommendation to council. You're going to take it from there?
Yes, I will then bring consolidated budget. It's on the agenda for the next council
The
meeting.
next one.
Yeah.
Fine. Okay, so that's all we're doing. We just considered it. That wasn't difficult. All in favour? Opposed? That carries. There are no reports. There's no new business. There's no public questions and comments, if I'm not mistaken. And I'll take a motion for adjournment. All in favour? Opposed? That carries.